Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds, and I am Cynthia Rojas. I have to tell you, I love that jingle. I just really love it. And I want to welcome little technical difficulty, our co-host, Peter Blakely. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good morning, Cynthia. Good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you love that jingle?
I do. And I was just thinking as it was playing, though, that every time I look at our new logo, I love it more and more.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. I do too. Well, welcome everybody to Coffee Time with Masterminds. This is a 30-minute show where we talk about issues in terms of leading nonprofits or mission-based organizations during a time of craziness. How about that? For an opening. And if you are joining us, please tell us your name and where you're from. We get listeners from all over the world. And I do want to say hi to our Australian listeners. We are syndicated in Australia, and it's been exciting to be a part of that landscape and also impart our knowledge. Today is a really interesting show. I'm going to bring on Nancy Varsos. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you, Cynthia? So happy to be here today.
Yeah, again, you've been with us before, and we so want to continue the conversation. But before we jump right in, so we've been having a series of conversations regarding the workforce. There are things that are happening right now at this time in the US. One, we are calling it the Great Resignation, where people are not returning to the jobs that they had pre-pandemic, and we were on a search to see where are they. And so we met a couple of people doing really cool stuff, and the pandemic helped us see that in fact there is another way of working, there's another way of living. We met somebody who's seen the country. She what did she do? She gutted out a bus.
That's right. She moved into her camper full time.
That is so cool. And then we talked to Elisa, a labor economist, to hear what's really going on with this great resignation. And now we have Nancy Varsos. And Nancy, you've been here before talking about culture, and you were on several months ago, earlier in the pandemic, when we were talking about a new way of working. Right. And we wanted to bring you back because nonprofits are really suffering when it comes to the war on talent, right? They normally suffer because they don't pay as much as their for-profit counterparts. They tend to lose that competitive edge sometimes to really great talent. But now the problem seems bigger. So today we wanted to talk to you about what can nonprofits do to remain competitive in that war of talent, and once we get them, what can nonprofit leaders do to keep this great talent? So tell us, Nancy, what's going on out there? What are you seeing?
It's been it is an interesting world of I've got two kids in their 20s, and they applied to jobs, and they don't hear back from them. And yet everybody in the world says that they've got openings, that help is wanted, and that they need people, as well as you all know, if we go to a restaurant or we go to a retail shop, they're all short of people. So it's a very strange world, as we were speaking about, Cynthia, of just trying to understand what's happening with the workforce. But I think as I look at what the pandemic did, it had us reevaluate who we were and what our lives were and what was important. And I think that's where, as you mentioned, I'm going to travel across the country. I'm going to take advantage of the life that I have. I don't have to be stuck at a desk in an office all the time. I can be doing what really is meaningful to me and what's exciting for me.
Yeah, and so it even happened with us. So when we came back after our summer hiatus, PETA told our listeners that she has moved, right? So we know that her background looks a little differently, but actually, what some may not know by just looking at her on a weekly basis is that she's actually moved to a different state and she's really happy. And that flexibility was due to PETA. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that we were able to move is that I hadn't seen a client in real life in about a year and a half. And I realized that it wasn't bothering my clients, that there was probably no expectation that I would ever go and see them in person again. And some of them weren't going to have an office for me to go see them at anyway, or half their staff would not be at that office on a given day. I think everybody just got so accustomed to running all our meetings by Zoom. We really can't imagine like spending an hour in our car or on public transportation just to go to a meeting when you could just turn it on your screen. So and that means you can live anywhere that you have good Wi-Fi.
Yeah. And in 2 weeks, I'm moving. And, for the same reasons, this idea of now we can work anywhere. So there's a lot that's come out of the pandemic. Nancy, you said something interesting about there are also employers who are not responding back to people who are applying. I wonder if that's a shortage in the HR department, but I had a similar experience. Someone told me that they went for a job and applied, and it was a great job. They left a great job for this job because it was more money. And then when they began with this new company, it turned out that the job was per diem and that it wasn't a full-time job with benefits. And I automatically thought of you. I said, wait a minute, this is what Nancy is talking about. So this is a different issue in that employers are not stepping up to the plate. And what we're hearing from our employers who are suffering and saying there's no one out there to hire, but then there are other employers who are not following through.
Yeah, they're being deceptive. It was interesting. My husband was reading an article the other day about a woman who decided to apply for 60 jobs in 30 days. And in applying for the jobs, she got one request for an interview only. The sign that said that for the application or for the job board said that she would be paid a certain amount of money, that she would be full-time, that she would have benefits. And when she interviewed for the job, the feedback was, nope, you'll get paid minimum wage until 6 months in, and then you'll have that opportunity to make $2 more an hour. No, you'll start part-time, and then after 60 days, we'll reevaluate you and see if you're full-time. So the deception is there, and I'm not quite sure why. I'm not quite sure how that benefits the organization. Lack of transparency, and are they going to benefit? I don't think people are that desperate to get to work.
Yes.
We're not in desperate times right now. They're either switching to another job, or they'll continue to collect unemployment, or they'll continue to do side jobs and not take something that they really don't want to have.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, excuse me, it sounds like employers at some point got used to calling the shots and think they're entitled to treating potential workers a certain way. And they haven't adjusted their expectations to to the new market. But two, what a mean and hostile way to start a relationship. We were talking about like, oh, we really hope you're going to be very loyal and stay here forever, but we're going to open our relationship by telling half truths and
Well, and I think in the outside world, the retail world, the restaurant world, you're going to stop shopping. You're going to I am an advocate. I was the biggest shopper in a store. I used to love to go to the stores and hit the retail storefronts, and I've become an online person because there's not availability. They push me there. There's no customer service. Why not just cook dinner at home? We've all learned that we can live in a much simpler way, and therefore that's even turning people off.
Yeah. I suspect that there's some companies who are really struggling with HR personnel and
Yep.
it's burdening them. I do want to. There was a comment that came up, and I just want to recognize, because Rebecca's in the background. Nancy is defining inequity in the workforce. Yes, let's talk
Absolutely.
about that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Inequity in the workforce when it comes to job searching, recruiting, anything of that nature. Nancy, what are you seeing out there?
I would think so. I think what's happening is they're not taking the human being behind the resume or behind the application. And what's happening is, in my perception, is that HR is inundated with resumes or not the right resumes,
Yeah.
quick to judge the resume. Oh, I have many managers that I'm working with now that are potentially recruiting and saying, "Oh, they had short stays," or, "Oh, we can't look at them because they don't have the perfect background." So we're not interviewing the human being. We're too quick to dismiss people. I think that we're not thinking about, we've had to think a little bit differently in the organization I'm working with. Is what is as I went back to the last time I was on the show, what is the culture that we need? Do they need to be in the office 5 days a week? Or can we work 1 day a week in the office and the other 4 days home? People want to be hybrid. We have people from all over the country. And if the managers aren't receptive to that, it's a quick toss it aside and not even consider. So I think what's happening is your management team or your managers are looking at it at face value versus potential a little more than we used to. And now it's an employee market, which means that they will ask for higher salaries. I've had to up my salaries probably by about 20 to 25%. Again, I feel like I'm back in 2006 when I was offering a receptionist $18 an hour, which in 2006, that was a tremendous amount of money. My thought is it's got to burst. I'm not sure when it's going to burst, but it's got to burst.
Yeah, you brought this idea of what to the show, meaning
Mm-hmm,
that we have to pay attention to the different roles, and we have to make
mm-hmm,
sure that we're looking at it from an equitable standpoint. And you had this
mm-hmm,
great idea, which I think about every time I pass a front desk person, about how we think roles like the receptionist would never be able to work from home. And you had this idea of, imagine a screen when you walk into a
mm-hmm.
building and someone's on the other side of that screen. That person is at home.
Yeah.
They still deliver the customer service that you expect, but they're not
Yeah.
necessarily at that place. And so that's an important point that employers need to pay attention to. Equity
And
when it comes to this new culture.
I think it's innovative. How can we be innovative? One of the things we talked about, Cynthia, I think when we were chatting is, can I have two part-time people that can share a job? Does
Yeah,
it have to be does the continuity have to be there? Again, can I have a receptionist working remotely? And really examining what is the purpose of the job? What is the outcome, the result of what that job is trying to achieve?
right.
And can we achieve that in a non-conventional way, in an innovative way, to help to what are employees? If you said, what's the top thing an employee is looking for today? It's flexibility.
Mhm.
How can I look at that flexibility? The office I've been working with during the pandemic, we haven't answered a phone out of the office in 2 years. Do we really need phones in the office? When and if we're in the office, we're communicating through Teams, we communicate through cell phones. What are some of the different ways that we can think about to be more thought and more innovative, more flexible, more engaged with our employees on how, and asking the employees. It goes also to asking your employee, how do you think you can make this job work in a different format?
Yeah.
Is it doable? We think about what people have gone through having children and working and potentially, sitting on a computer and trying to conduct a meeting and your kids are in the background and you're running around, you're not allowed to leave the house, you're terrified of illness. We've been through a lot. Now, how do we make it work better for the organization?
Yeah. I know Peter and I know clients where there are substantial staff that are resigning, or really or leaders within an organization, whether it's a few number or the top leader, and that
Yep.
also in these times causes a even more disruption, right?
Yes.
Because leaders who are leading through complex times require visibility. They require
Mhm.
communication, and when they're not there, those things start to fall apart. Peter, what are you seeing?
Uh, there's a lot of turnover in every organization and at every level. I think at the level of direct service workers, those there does seem to be a shortage of those workers because the pay is not good enough, right? And they're competing with each other and they're competing with other industries. But also at the level of leaders and executive directors, there's a huge amount of turnover, and people are leaving abruptly, which is really disruptive in an organization when an ED only gives a few weeks and then they leave. And I think that that's just really adding to everybody's stress. So everybody is overworked because they're short staffed, and they don't see any way out of it because they can't hire more people.
Yeah. If there's anything we learn is that this pandemic is not temporary, and that this is our way of working for however long this is going to exist. So, how do we keep the people we have now and the people that we can successfully recruit? What needs to change in the workplace? So, Nancy, you mentioned flexibility, but what else needs to change?
I think we need to be as engaged as possible with our people. We need to think about, are we talking to our people? Are we understanding what potentially is de-energizing them? Are we asking the why they're feeling burnt out? Even if it's a lack of people, then how do we motivate them in the small ways? Can we send them flowers? Can we uh, you know, give them a little something to be able to improve their work environment? What are the things that they're looking for to create an environment that allows them to be a little less stressed and more engaged in what they're doing? Do we bring them back to the customer? Have we been doing training and development? Have we been connecting with them outside of the work? Have we appreciated them?
Yeah, the amount of training that needs to happen now,
Mhm.
and nonprofits are usually operating under limited resources.
Mhm.
But
Right.
this is an area that if you have a budget line item for professional development, you hope that not everybody uses it. That is the reality of nonprofits,
Right.
so that you don't expend the entire um, budget in that area. But I encourage nonprofits to actually increase that
Yeah.
substantially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being able to connect with your people, being able to have your team connect with your team and realize they're not on their own, that they're, especially if they're still working from home and not necessarily engaging with the team. So essential to bring them together in whatever way that you can, whether it be a communication style, whether it be a leadership training, whether it be just enjoying each other's company again as we slowly go back to the work environment. How do I bring them together? Can I buy them lunch once a week? Can we do a potluck? What are the safe ways that we can convene as a group in together and support one another? One thing the pandemic has done is isolate people in the work world. There's no what I call cubicle collaboration. There's no ability to turn around and say, "Oh, what are your thoughts on that?" Or, "I've got this issue I'm dealing with. I'm not quite sure what to do. Can you help me?" In this world that we're living in, I feel like it's a lot harder to call someone on Teams spontaneously or whatever
Yeah.
format you're on and say, "Oh, by the way, I just was kind of trying to work out this situation. What are your thoughts?" So we've lost a lot of that, what I call cubicle camaraderie. It's not water cooler talk. It's truly cubicle camaraderie where you turn around and you engage your individuals. So the question I would ask you to think about is, how do I re-engage the individuals again? How do I bring them together? How do I build that team up to be a team again, to know how to work with one another again? Because we haven't worked with one another. We haven't even asked, how was your weekend? Because in my world, I jump right into the call and we don't have a lot of chat because you're
Yeah.
call after call after call after call.
Yeah.
And you mentioned training, which used to be an opportunity to bring people together. And a lot of trainings were done with everybody in the conference room and discussing topics and things like that. And then because of COVID, they had to go remote, and sometimes not to modalities that brought people together, right? So you might be doing your own online self-paced course and people just look at it as extra work and they have so much on their plates, right? It's
well, and breakout rooms
have
been the best invention in the entire world. I've done a lot of different trainings, communication style, team building trainings. I will say I was back in a classroom 3 weeks ago and it was the best feeling in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
But those breakout rooms bring out a lot of conversation just to kind of with people that you might not talk with every day.
Yeah. Yep. And one of the other things that you talked about was making the workplace a little bit less stressful. And we have talked on this show a lot about structural care and how the idea of self-care places the burden on the worker or on the individual to make themselves healthy or, to reduce their stress level. How can we put that burden on the organization more and on the individual less? And I think that's part of what you're talking about, Nancy, is everybody is super stressed. If we didn't have the capacity to do those things 2 years ago, we certainly don't now. So, what are some of the things that organizations are putting in place that you think are beneficial in reducing that level of stress?
I think sometimes, again, what I find with most organizations when I go in and they're looking for help, they haven't asked the question. They haven't talked to their employees. They haven't engaged their employees. And so it starts with asking the question, because what might be typically the stress is too many meetings. It's I've been online all day. It's I've got to juggle home and I've got to juggle here, and my child's school just got shut down. And now what am I going to do? Or my child's quarantined for 14 days. So, what are some of the things that the organization can do? Can they be a little more flexible with time off? Can they think about how to manage the timing? And can you serve your customers in the evening, or can you serve your customers early morning? Or your clients? What are the different ways that we can look at the business and say, what can we do best to meet in the middle with both the client and our employees? What are small things that make an employee smile? And maybe it's just a smile, maybe it's just a thank you, and maybe we really haven't thanked people because we're not there and integrating with them in the same way that we were in the past. Surveys are a great way.
What's so interesting, first of all, Nancy, you mentioned like 5 things that we're actually doing shows on, because you're right on, right? We're doing a whole show on what are you doing with your employee survey, right? This is the time to really listen at those answers and responses. So thank you for lifting that. But it's so extraordinary. I asked you the question and we didn't talk about productivity. No one mentioned accountability. I mean, these things are important, but these times require different forms of leadership, right? This is not the time to micromanage. This is not the time to hold people to this exact hour of working. This flexibility is important. Go ahead, Peter.
That was such a concern. At the beginning of the pandemic, people were so worried. How are we going to know people are working? And the reality is, you didn't know they were working before.
No, but
you knew they were in the building. That was about it. And
what I think it's actually gone the other way. People are working too hard versus not
There are
hard
some,
enough.
yes.
Yes. That we're finding that people are burnt out because they never turn it off, because it's sitting in their living room and you can hear the email come through. You can hear the Teams call come through. And I do it myself. The phone is always on. It doesn't matter whether I'm scheduled to work or not. You're available. And we expect it now. And I've noticed when I go back to the office, I feel like I'm unproductive because all I do is chit chat all day. Where that's how we used to function.
Yeah.
We actually collaborated. We talked to one another. And I leave the office. I go, I got these 10 things because I haven't been sitting in front of my computer. So it's that adaptation of, it's okay not to be online all day long. You can be productive not being online.
Yeah. And I think Peter has a book. Remind me, Peter, about we could get better at building relationships through Zoom or through these
Oh,
web
yeah.
portals.
Yes.
It just is what it is. And I was thinking about this. We've mentioned this. I think we've mentioned this before. Peter, myself, and the other co-host Rebecca have only seen each other 3 times. I think
Mhm.
total, three
Yeah.
times. We've been on the show for a year and a half, and we knew each other
Mhm.
6 months prior. In 2 years, we've seen each other 3 times. I talk to Peter all the time.
Yeah.
For me, Peter and Rebecca are friends, right?
Mhm.
We've been able to build this relationship. And it's really interesting because for me, relationships get built over food, and you sit down and you relax and you talk about things. And I've had to learn how to do that over Zoom.
And you said early on, Cynthia, because there's no hallway,
Mhm.
walking into the meeting together or leaving the meeting together, that you have to build that chatting time into the agenda.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be simple as everybody has to give one thing that they did over the weekend, or you come up with a new rule that you start the meeting with 5 minutes of meet and greet, and it's mandatory. It's not something about, oh, we're waiting for so and so to join.
Right.
We need that ability to just calm down, regenerate, rejuvenate. Because I think that's part of the problem, is that we get so regimented in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard. So we're about 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes left. Nancy, words of wisdom for nonprofits. I mean, they're really hurting. People are rethinking their lives. Nonprofits have to adhere to the increased demand for services,
Mhm.
and they're still, their resources continue to be limited in terms of pay and salaries. What are your recommendations for nonprofit leaders as we continue to live in these times?
I think it's to reevaluate of how you grab the human being behind the job. So how do I market to the human being side? Typically, nonprofits are about the human being. So how do I engage that human being within my ad for a job, within my promotion for a job? And am I giving the human being the human side of the job, or am I too worried to fill a slot? And I think the more that you can get to the heart of the individual, the more likely they're going to want to work for you, because your mission, as well as your values to your employees, should be about the heart of the person.
Wow, you've said the word human being a lot. So I'm hearing it. And what occurred to me as I was listening to you is that
Mhm.
job descriptions or job postings are really they take a lot of effort because we want to put the position in the organization in the best light.
Mhm.
But what I hear you saying is that the way that gets translated is, instead of me telling you how great the organization is and how wonderful we're doing our work, why don't I make that job description about what's it like to work with us now? How do we take
Mhm.
care of our employees? How are we bringing the human side into the work instead
And
of
how you can contribute to the organization, how
yeah,
you can
Right.
contribute to the mission.
Yeah.
So it can be about the contributions you make to the organization versus your key responsibilities.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But also, we get it and we're paying attention
Mhm.
to our employees. And
Mhm.
that's what people want. So
Mhm.
thank you. These are different times and it calls for different forms of leadership. Nancy, you are wrapping up our 5 week series on everything related to human resources, recruitment, retention, the Great Resignation. And so I thank you for coming back on the show. I'm sure you will be back. Peter, this
Well,
was
thank
exciting.
you.
I've learned so much.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been fantastic.
It has been. And so we're starting a
Thanks for joining us.
new topic that's going to run about 5 or 6 weeks starting next Friday. So stay tuned on Coffee Time with Masterminds Fridays at 10:30 a.m. Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a great weekend, everybody.